Hello, everyone. I'm Lenny Pinna, and I'm the editor of this book, A Face from Uranus, Correspondence between Tedd Burr and Henry Bellamann, 1943 to 1945. I'm also the screenwriter for the limited TV series In the Name of Jamie Wakefield, Too Pretty for a Boy. I've been reading from episode 3, and I last read part 3 of episode 3, in which Tedd and Henry had met in the Great Hall of Arts and Science, and I would say that was sort of a battle over Tedd's novel and the character Sidney French. I'm going to pick up with part 4 of episode 3, and it's right after Tedd was left on Henry's chair saying, "Ah, Mr. Bellamann, you are a light." And so we dissolve to Tedd's bedroom during the day. Helen, his mother, brings Tedd a letter. "Teddy, another letter from New York just came for you." We then cut to Henry's study. Henry is still wearing the dressing robe as he writes. He also now has an oxygen tube. We hear his voiceover. "My dear Tedd, I have not been well for several days. I am too occupied to sit at my desk, for I have small, not serious, heart disturbances which annoy me and keep me in search of an oxygen tank for convenience sake. But I am not an invalid. Please feel free to write whenever you like and as much as you like." We cut back to Tedd's bedroom. Tedd is still dressed in his silk pajamas, and he's writing fervently. We hear his voiceover. "My dear Mr. Bellamann, I am so glad to hear from you, but very sad over your state of health. Your invitation for letters as often as I care makes me most happy. Today, I'm writing my thoughts, both gay and disturbing. For the last few days, I have been in a state of utter depression." We dissolve to Henry's study. Henry is now with his oxygen tube, sitting in his high-back chair, reading Tedd's letter. He looks up to see Tedd standing near the bookcase, holding Freud's book. Tedd: "Last night, I began on the basic writings of Sigmund Freud. Thank you for sending it to me. I never would have found him." Henry nods, accepting the acknowledgement. "I can certainly read his observations as coldly as the next person, but perhaps with a little more understanding." Tedd opens the book to a particular page. "I struck on this: a female mind in a male body. I thought this combination of thought and words originated with me, but in Freud, there are exactly the same words." Henry looks noticeably uncomfortable. "So much of what you have said to me has come from Freud, am I right?" "I have not attempted any diagnosis beyond what you yourself have indicated to me." We dissolve to Tedd's bedroom, and this is one of those shifts, those imperceptible shifts of location while they're still talking. Henry is sitting with his oxygen tube in the corner of Tedd's room. Tedd is now standing in front of the bureau mirror. Henry: "I think you see yourself pretty clearly. I would just like to see you well adjusted to your surroundings and living happily. You have already taken your first and best step. You have stopped wearing makeup. Your next step would be to cut your hair shorter." Tedd turns around with a look of incredulous wonder. "To eliminate all of the confusion you cause for yourself and everybody else by secretly trying to attract the attention that you really don't want. I am certain that your simple, boyish self is the most attractive version you can make of yourself." We have Tedd's wonder of expression cutting to the next scene of a barber shop where Tedd is now sitting in a barber chair facing the mirror. The barber has already cut the top and sides of his hair. He is presently cutting the back of Tedd's hair. "Not too short, please." We cut back to Henry's living room during the day. Henry plays Debussy's pagodes on his piano. He is not wearing the oxygen tube, but the tank is near him. Catherine enters with Henry's mail. Henry plays for a minute before finishing the piece. Lovely. Thank you. Reminiscing about Debussy again? Not really. Oh, just a random desire? Let's just say you were right. About? The present is alluding to the past. How so? The boy from Bellevue. Is he helping you with your writing? I can't say precisely yet, but there does seem to be a strange serendipity to his entering the picture at this time. Can you speak more specifically? It involves Debussy. I'm listening. The protagonist of his novel is a concert pianist who is enamored with Debussy's Clair de Lune. The character is an extremely distorted version of Jamie Wakefield. Wow, that's saying something. His name is Sidney French. Okay. The surname French, vis-a-vis Harris Mitchell. Uh-huh. That is an odd coincidence. Tedd Burr's family lineage is also German. Catherine raises an eyebrow. And he was very close to his maternal grandmother who lived with his family. This is all quite interesting indeed. I do hope it will help to inspire or motivate you to work. I hope so too. Speaking of serendipity, you have another letter here from Ted. Henry reaches for the mail. And I have another voice lesson with Lucy Ball at 11. Ah, I guess that's my cue to exit. Don't forget to take your oxygen tank with you. Cut to the interior of Henry's study. Henry, with his oxygen tank, sits in his window chair, smiling as he reads Ted's letter. Ted appears behind the chair and comes around to face Henry. How strange that I should have made you such an infinite part of me. You are almost like a silent partner within my life. I want to tell you everything, for it seems unnatural not to. I'll begin with, and the scene dissolves to, the exterior of J&L Steel Building in Cleveland during the day. It is a flashback. Ted rereads the newspaper clipping in his hand. He is not wearing makeup and boasts his well-groomed shorter hairstyle, presenting a more boyish look. We hear Ted's voiceover. I'll begin with my answering an advertisement by a Cleveland Steel Corporation for office clerks. We cut to the interior of J&L Steel personnel office. There's an establishing shot of Ted being interviewed by Mr. Hack and a woman. We hear Ted's voiceover. I was briefly interviewed and accepted for a very well-paying position. I was completely at ease. We jump cut back to Henry's study. Ted is relating his story to Henry, and Henry's smiling. My new appearance gave me confidence, thanks to you. Without you, none of this could be possible. The flashback continues. We are now at the interior of a restaurant in downtown Cleveland. Ted enters a busy restaurant during the lunch hour. No one pays particular attention to him as he proceeds to sit at the counter. A waitress approaches him, smiling. He smiles. We hear his voiceover. While in Cleveland, I ate at a fashionable restaurant just to test myself. Could I walk in there? Would everything be all right? We quickly cut back to Henry's study, and Ted tells Henry, it was. I went mostly unnoticed. Henry smiles. We cut back to the interior of a movie theater in downtown Cleveland. A scene from Phantom of the Opera is on screen. We hear Ted's voiceover. I saw the wonderful movie, The Phantom of the Opera. Cut to the exterior of the movie theater. Ted exits the theater under the marquee showing The Phantom of the Opera starring Claude Rains. Claude Rains. We have a quick cut to Henry's study where Henry is enjoying the moment of connection. I so enjoyed the acting of Claude Rains, your Dr. Tower in King's Row. Back to the flashback. It is the exterior of the Burrs' home. A neighbor woman is talking to Helen, Ted's mother, outside of the home as Ted approaches. Helen has a concerned look upon her face. Ted senses her discomfort. We hear Ted's voiceover. As I arrived home, a neighbor was discussing the war with my mother. She informed me that one of the Rogers boys had been seriously wounded in Sicily. Rogers? The name stuck in my throat. We cut to Ted's bedroom at night. On top of his bed, Ted lies on his stomach, crying. We hear his voiceover. All night, I was in such agony. No, not James Rogers, the young man I loved when I was in 8th grade, and still do to this very day. We cut to the ice cream parlor in Bellevue during the day. With some anxiety, Ted waits for Jean to arrive. Jean enters brightly. Hi, Ted. Wow, your hair is so much shorter. What made you do that? I just needed a change. I showed your photograph to all the nurses at work. They were shocked. They couldn't believe how beautiful you look. They said you look like a movie star, and they hope to meet you someday. I told them I'd bring you around sometime. Ted seems uncharacteristically quiet. What's the matter? I hardly know where to begin. Start with what's ever bothering you. The waitress arrived. Hi, kids. You want your usual? Jean. Yes, please. Ted. I think I just want a cup of plain vanilla today. Really? No chocolate sauce? No, thanks. My stomach's a little off. Plain vanilla it is. The waitress leaves. So what's wrong? I heard back from Henry Bellamann. He doesn't like my novel. Hmm? Why not? He doesn't like any of the characters. He thinks they're unlikable. He doesn't like the dialogue either. He says everyone sounds artificial and pretentious. And he doesn't like Sydney. Actually, he disdains Sydney. He thinks Sydney is just too awful to even exist in society. Oh, Ted, I'm so sorry. I thought he was going to help me. Honestly, I don't care what he says. I don't agree with him. He's only one person. I think lots of other people would like it. That's what I think. I told him I'm still going to try to get it published. That's right, Ted. Don't give up. Don't let him dash your hopes. He said he'll give me some notes to help improve it. Wait a minute. If he dislikes your novel as much as you say he does, why would you want his notes? If I were you, I wouldn't trust his opinion. Ted looked surprised by her words. You know what I think? I think he's probably jealous of you. I'll bet he's threatened by a talented younger writer. Really, you think? I do. Thank you, Jean. You're making me feel a little better. The waitress arrives with their order. Here we are. Plain vanilla. I hope this helps your stomach. Ted nodded. Jean, if you decide you want some of mine, feel free to put your spoon in. Ted nodded again. So, something else bothering you? Last night, I heard that a soldier from Bellevue was badly injured in the war. They said his last name was Rogers. I'm worried that it could be James Rogers, who was a few years ahead of us in school. It's not James. It's his older brother, John. Really? How do you know? You know Janice Hilder? Her older sister Francine and John Rogers were high school sweethearts. They went to the prom together. Janice says Francine is completely distraught by the news. She's been writing to him faithfully all this time, waiting for him to return. It must be so terrible for her. Janice said James is coming home on furlough for 10 days to be with the family. They're praying for John to pull through. I didn't know John, but I so hope he makes it. Janice said even if he does make it, he'll be permanently disabled. He lost both legs. Oh, no. James is actually doing very well. He received his wings in a commission. Oh, that's wonderful. Still, I feel bad for the entire family. We just don't know what can happen from one day to the next, do we? Jean, I have some other news, but it might not be such good news. What do you mean? I went to Cleveland yesterday to interview for an office position at J&L Steel, and they hired me right on the spot. What? Oh my God! Ted? No! I'm sorry. Jean breaks into an extended cry. Ted puts his hand on her shoulder. As she regains her breath, she uses her napkin to blow her nose. Oh, Ted. What am I going to do without you? Don't worry. I'll come back and visit you, I promise. I'm sorry I'm so emotional. I guess I knew this day would come sometime. I'm sad to leave you, but I've got to work and make some money and begin to make a life. I can't just wait around here hoping for my novel to be published and bought by Hollywood. That dream might never come true. I know. This is the real world. You just have to accept it. She looks down at her ice cream. I can't eat now. I lost my stomach. We dissolve to the interior of Henry's study during the day. Henry frowns. Ted looks out the window. Although I felt bad about Jean, I really could only think about James Rogers. I can't tell you how relieved I was that he was not injured. Still, I'm dreading his return to Bellevue next week. I don't wish to see him. Even more, I wish for him not to see me. We dissolve to an imagined scene. It's the exterior of a pond in the winter in Bellevue. Ted walks near the ice skating pond. Henry follows behind him. I'm afraid if I catch even a glimpse of him, I'll be undone. All the fires that cooled during these past years will rage again inside of me. James skates on the frozen pond in the background as Ted turns to look at Henry. Henry continues to watch James skate. I don't know why I have any feelings for him. He never hardly saw me. It's a torture to love him, in the way that Freud spoke of, a purely mental state. Ted turns back and watches James skate, with a close-up of Ted's eyes tearing as he watches James. James is the one person I can love quietly, to stay in the background, out of sight, and just pray for his safety and happiness. I want nothing of him, but from him now. With contempt, Ted turns to face Henry. Now that I am looking like this, Henry stares at Ted. Ted passionately confesses. I would give my life if during the next 10 days I could be the woman he desires to love, spiritually as well as physically. Henry remained silent, still, staring. There! I said it! Woman! It's still in me. Henry looks at Ted disapprovingly. I've conformed externally, but I am bitter, and I still dream of it. Henry turns and walks away. Ted cries. Please don't hate me. I love so helplessly and hopelessly. End of imagined reality. And this is also the end of part 4 of episode 3. We'll continue with the last part next week. So if you have any questions or comments or any perceptions about what's running through the series thus far, please feel free to make comments and we'll have a discussion about it. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you next time.